Good morning, y'all. This is Ron. Sunday morning, a little after 11 a.m. Uh, I had to work on yesterday, and never like working on weekends, but I was real excited when I got up this morning. Was listening to the video from yesterday when you guys went to Deuteronomy 6, and some of the things that Nick was explaining there, and the all the things that came out of the conversations and the teachings was very enlightening. Even some of the stuff that comes stemmed from the questions, but uh, a couple of things that really jumped out at me when you start talking about hearing and the true expression of what it means to hear and the difference between hearing and listening, I thought was very interesting. Uh, but also, it kind of made me think that we are now just getting a true understanding of what the true essence of this human body is and how remarkable it is, and not even yet knowing the capabilities of it. So because I listened at that, and somebody asked about some other scripture about hearing it, and just the energy and the vibrations that this body works to transform and to mold and to move, and uh, I just want to hear some more about that, because I think it's more. You talked about the heart, the hearing with the heart. Uh, what happens when we get in rhythm with this body as it is designed and what we're capable of doing. Uh, do we have to go through a physical death to be able to walk through walls or transition? Like, I know I might think I'm kind of getting out there, and maybe I am, but it just sounds like so much that we're capable of doing. So uh, I thought that portion was very interesting. Uh,
Yeah. Well,
any, anything you want to talk about on that, Nick, any further?
Sure. Good morning,
Yeah.
everyone.
Good morning, Nick. If I may, and I apologize to interrupt you, but before you speak, can I just maybe share something in reference to the conversation yesterday?
Sure.
And what I wanted to say, Nick, in terms of yesterday, when you were speaking about self-awareness, I think the capacity for us to understand our true nature and the ability to be able to expand our consciousness in terms of that which we are hearing, is our birthright. And again, all that was said, we talk about hearing it from our third ear. And some people say, and again, that 80%, we listen, but only 20% we hear. And I think that we're hearing, in the macro, or what I heard yesterday is just a way of hearing now that is not just from a mental perspective in terms of psychology, but looking at it from the psychology of our heart and soul. So I just wanted to share those thoughts because I think that third ear is significant when we talk about our perceptions. So I just wanted to share those thoughts, but I truly appreciate what was said yesterday, and hearing it from the third ear is my desire. Thanks for letting me share that, Nick, and everyone. I'm done.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you. The third ear and the third eye very much connected, and they're part of the expanded set of senses that we actually have. So there's the physical senses, and because they are physical, all things that are physical are themselves material manifestations of spiritual abilities, principles, etc. So all of your physical senses are sort of the physicalized version of your spiritual senses. And so when we reawaken to our spiritual senses, we activate the third ear and the third eye, etc. But that's all part of the sort of non-physical nature of our ultimate being, and how this physical experience is a reflection of that being. And as you were saying, Ron, what does it look like when we walk through walls and stuff like that? Yes, correct. But we don't have to go through physical death for that to occur. However, when we go through physical death, when we make our transition out of this experience, that is a version of what will allow us to regain those abilities that we have forgotten about. Because if we're no longer attached to the physical, then we have to basically, there's a process of relearning the non-physical aspect of ourselves. Now, in the case of physical death or transition out of the material experience, it's kind of a forced transition in some way. But we can learn how to do those things while in the physical experience. And that is one of the side effect is maybe not the best term, but it's a side effect of spiritual evolution, is that you bring those all the parts of ourselves that we don't even remember are a part of ourselves into this physical experience, and we draw the two together, the physical and non-physical. And that's when we start seeing things in the physical that are what we would call miraculous. It is the drawing together or the unifying of things that appear to be separate through spiritual growth and evolution. And there's probably multiple examples of this, but in the Bible, I mean, one of the most recognizable ones is Elijah, who disappeared in a fiery chariot, I believe, if I'm remembering that correctly. But the point is, you don't have to make your transition out of this physical in terms of the experience of death in order to regain all of those abilities, to open a third eye, to be able to hear clearly, to be able to speak clearly, to be able to all the other senses clearly.
Well, one notion that kind of has intrigued me for a long time, and I guess what initiated it was just a simple statement, which I will badly paraphrase, that is accredited as having been said by Einstein. As he aged, first of all, he said he had no fear of death. And second, his sense of, and here I'm going to do it badly, the things that we define as separate and individual units, you know, planets, molecules, whatever. He said as he aged, he intuited and understood a softening of these, which is kind of what we're talking about. So you could talk about a third ear, fifth ear, third eye, and all the senses. But I get a sense as I age that all of what we earlier thought of, this is this, and this is this, and that is that, for want of a better term, softens. And when something softens, it's easier for it for you to have a sense that they sort of merge a bit. So I mean, at some point, there aren't 8 senses. They're just there's awareness, and we contribute to some extent, I guess, maybe, given our mentality or awareness, to forming them as if they were independent and separate senses. And the body assumes certain functions in those areas, but we also know with damage to the body that it can change itself and do things differently. So to me, the most fascinating and intriguing thing to sort of contemplate is this notion of merging. Um, and I guess if you listen to some of the experiences of people who've taken hallucinogenic drugs, there's very much of that going on. And so there it is. It's there. It's around us. And if I have one other little quick comment, I've always been fascinated with the, what do we call pop culture expressions that are around us all the time too, that suggest this. You know, I hear you, I feel you, I see you. That's been said for decades. And what is that suggested? Something in this area without maybe needing to go to this level of understanding, but it's intuitively implied. That's my sense. So I just find this all wonderfully intriguing and fascinating. And that just seems to be how things develop. Maybe you get to a point, if you're quote unquote lucky, before you pass from this earth, where suddenly it's just all together. There it is. It's all one. It's just all, and you can't even use the word parts so much, because the notion of a part is a hard edge, maybe. So that's just all softening. That's the best way I could think to say it in the moment.
I
Go ahead, Ron.
No, I was just going to say maybe we're back to where we were years ago. I think that's the idea and the culture of indigenous people that Richard is describing. Everything was shared, whether you're talking about North America or Central America or Africa, where have you. It was more of a unity kind of thing. Yes, you did have different tribes, and yes, you did have disagreements, but for the most part, in the betterment of mankind, the earth belonged to everyone, and there wasn't, this is mine, this plot of land with the water on is mine, this plot of land with the most vegetables or fruit is mine, and that is yours. And you didn't have that. They rotated and they shared, and there were no hard lines. There were no edges like that. So the more we've gotten away from that, the irony is we've not only not been close to each other, but we haven't been close to ourselves as far as the knowledge of who we are and what we are. So that's what part of what fascinated me about the little part of the lesson that I heard yesterday. That you guys are talking about. So yeah, it does sound like a softening of cutting away of those edges. So, but anyway, I'm done. Thank you.
What I was heading that direction where you went, Ron, in terms of indigenous people and how they were one with everything. I believe that there is no unicity, there's no oneness or merging or awareness of the depth of our being one with the Creator until we become one with each other as well as our environment, because our environment is us and we are it. So what I'm saying in essence is this: if we don't, in our thinking, our desires, if we don't get to the place where we truly embrace the natural environment as did indigenous people, then we won't be at that state of awareness where we are supposed to be, or where we were created to be. We will have some idea of it, and we will have experiences with it. We will have quote unquote interludes with it, but we won't be able to truly be functional or to truly be one with until we are in that space, that spiritual space where indigenous people were prior to the selfish divisions that took place, and the whole concept of ownership of natural resources and natural lands. Prior to that, everything was in one, unified, or that was unicity until that point. I'm done. Thank you.
Can I say something once more? And George reminded me of this when he made his comment. I was kind of excited about what I heard about the tape on tape yesterday. And I started off and asked Nick a question, led him to a place, and I forgot to ask if there were any questions. Is there anything else that anyone else may have had that outside of the lesson from yesterday? Is there any question that you may have had for Nick or Pastor? And then if not, if there are any questions about the lesson yesterday. So accept my apologies, and we'll go ahead from there if there are any questions.
Well, Ron, this is Rainia. I have something to say about what Pastor said. It might dovetail into yesterday. I'm sorry if it's hard to hear me. It sounds too like when you're talking about the divisions, like the moment of the Tower of Babel, when we were stricken with the different tongues. I feel like, as you're talking, it was stricken with the inability now to share in that oneness with the universe, that unified language with the universe, not just with other humans, or even other species, I guess.
Absolutely. That's a great point, Rainia.
Point.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, I was just agreeing with it. That is a great point. Go ahead, I'm listening.
Yeah, I was excited.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
Because it gives me new insight into what it means when it talks about the languages were confused when the tower at the Tower of Babel, and we get the word babbling, meaning talking but saying nothing or not being understood. The language, I can see that very clearly, that that was a metaphor letting us see something that we had not experienced before in the earth. I do believe that it was not so much a tower being constructed as it was a message being delivered. And the message being delivered, to me, what I'm seeing based on what Rainia said, is that this tower actually is religion itself, and the confusion of that religion. And right now, if we look at that and do an overlay of the Tower of Babel story, then what we see is that all of the different branches of the religions are not able to communicate with each other with clarity. What the belief systems are confusing to the people within them, as well as those who are engaged with other religious systems. And so that language of spirituality is definitely confused. And because it is so confused, that also means, as Rainia said, that we are unable to not only understand the language of the universe, but even to speak the language of the universe and embrace the language of our natural environment. That was a powerful observation, and I'm very grateful for that. Thank you. I'm done.
What are you saying, though? Are you saying that the point has to come together when man decides to drop his differences and to come together to hear from the universe? Go over it one more time for me. I'm trying to understand.
What I'm saying is that in all reality, it does not take every single individual on the face of this earth to do that. However, there has to be a man, a type of man, a type of human who stands in the gap. What does that look like? That looks like, let's say, for example, all of those of us who are on this call or have been on these calls, all of us are the man in the gap, the Adam, who's in the gap between where religion has brought us and where we should be spiritually. We're in that gap. When we are in a place where we are able to, on a continuous basis, communicate with the universe, understand the language of the universe, embrace it for what it is, and not be doubtful and skeptical because of what we've been taught. When we throw all of the intellectual understandings of the scriptures out of the window and began to embrace the spiritual understandings and what was actually said in the writings of these scriptures and glean from it our spiritual nature in essence, then if that just group of us are able to do that, then not only will we be able to continuously communicate with the universe, not only will we be able to continuously communicate with our natural environment, inclusive of the animals, etc., but we will also be able to burst into this earth realm the energy that is necessary for others to glean from it without even knowing what they're doing. No differently than our birthing into this universe, a deep desire for change, a deep desire to bring to a resolution all the isms that have separated us. And what happened when our desire is there and we are on the same page, that we saw how that happened. And when we are on that same page, when we are at that place, where we are totally committed to speaking the language of the universe, to being one with the universe, it is at that point that I do believe beyond the shadow of any doubt that we will be able to have that experience that Raina described or alluded to in her earlier statement. Does that help, Ron?
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Are there any other questions or comments about that? Because honestly, I'm really excited about that. I think that puts us also in a clearer, give us a clearer understanding of what is necessary, what is imperative for us to be a part of, or not a part of, I'm sorry, imperative for us to embrace in order for us to be the effective spiritual beings that we seek to be. It doesn't take, when we talk about being Elohim, to truly thoroughly embrace that, we have to dispense with looking for or even allowing political actions around us to influence us in terms of influencing our emotions. We have to be in a place where, regardless of what is said, we recognize it for what it is. Babes who are confused about everything that is and the source of all confusion that exists. When we are there, where we can move beyond these statements and actions and see with a clarity, regardless of what is being presented to us, that is an illusion. It is not a reality. Because if you really think about what is taking place, what we have seen in the last week, in the last couple of days, what we have seen is a lying president who sold out college students, indigenous people, sold out the environment in order to get a budget, a debt ceiling deal that he did not have to do. He could have very easily done all that needed to be done without even having to get a debt ceiling agreement. But he sold everyone out in order to get it. And then on top of that, what do we see? We see a man who has played both sides of the aisle in oh my God, the guy from South Carolina,
Tim Scott?
Graham?
No, the black dude.
Clyburn?
Scott.
Clyburn, yes. We've seen Clyburn sell out. for months I've been saying, it's not years, that Clyburn is not who you think he is. And now what happened? We see coming to light that he made a deal with the devil in order for him to keep his seat or to be in a position of power. And when you make a deal with the devil, you're the devil also. So he made a deal with the adversaries. And now what has happened? Everyone has began to see that he is an adversary himself. So when we stop looking at these things as being things that are past walls that block us from being bringing into this environment balance, when we no longer allow those things to beset us or trouble us, it is then that we are truly embracing the nature and the essence of who we are. Does that make sense?
Yep.
Yeah, it does.
Questions or comments about that? And I readily admit that it's not an easy task when you embrace humanity and you see the harm that's taking place. It's hard to move beyond that and understand that these things are being presented to us because they are illusions that we are obligated to remove from the concept, from the mental concept or the psyche of humanity itself by virtue of embracing the language of the universe, the language that we were created to speak, the language that we were created to respond to. Right now, we are responding/reacting to the language of confusion, the language of this earth consciousness, as opposed to changing the language of the earth consciousness. So the consciousness as above would be the consciousness as below, meaning that they would be one and the same, as above, so is below. I'm done. Thank you.
Hi, good morning. This is Audrey. I think it's interesting that when you said the lion guy from South Carolina, and somebody said Graham, somebody said Scott, somebody said Clyburn, all of them fit the bill. So we cannot rely on politicians and politics to solve anything, because eventually they all fit the same mold. They're just after power and money for themselves. Anyway, I just thought that was funny.
Absolutely. And that's how we have to see it. That's how we have to respond to it. Like, this is, I don't know why we just be shocked by stuff like this. That's the expectation. I mean, it has been like that forever and a day. And the color of the skin does not determine what you embrace. It has no bearing on it at all. We are not here to deal with skin tones. We're here to deal with concepts that actually use skin tones to manipulate people. We're here to deal with the concepts that create separation, the concepts that to a certain degree forces us to hear the language of the earth, as opposed to speaking the language of the universe. Does that make sense?
Yeah. I had to work yesterday, and I kind of had to snap out of that because I hate working on Saturday. I think it robs me when I miss logging on Saturdays. But when I got up and got running my errands this morning, I got a chance to listen to the first third anyway of the video. It refreshed me, and it kind of woke me up. It rejuvenated me, and it got me to thinking. I was really excited when I came on the line, and that's why I said I forgot to ask anybody else had the questions. But the thing I guess I'm saying to it is that one day of missing and stepping back and having to take a look, I can see us and see us growing. I can see us being transformed. I see the energy. I see the desire. So with all that other stuff that goes on, we are being prepared for it. We are prepared for it. And it's the thing we've said all along, changing ourselves. So as we continue to seek enlightenment and move in this direction, missing yesterday kind of gave me a more appreciative viewpoint this morning. So I can see us, and it does appear, even to me, a lot of times that things are moving slower than I want them to. They're still moving, and just the observations that Nick saw this morning, and I mean yesterday, and the discussion that it brought, and the questions that it brought, and Rainia's observation this morning. I mean, we're on top of it. I think we're so close. We're in the middle of it. We can't see who and what we are. And I just wanted to add that, because I think our desire has us on track and moving in that direction. So all those things, because you can't cut the television on or pick up the phone anymore from seeing stuff. And that is the stuff that we've asked to be revealed, and things that we're being prepared to handle. So just want to add that. Thank you.
Well, I think we're going to continue to see the stuff until we embrace what we just talked about. I think that the reason we see the reason the stuff still exists is because we have brought it to fruition. Now it's time for us to bring it to a place of resolution. Is one thing to have something revealed. It's another thing to resolve it. So how do we bring it to resolution? It's not an action that we take physically in terms of moving from one place to another. How do we bring it to a place of fruition, or a place of resolution, rather? We bring it to a place of resolution by being who we are created to be, by being who we say we are. And what I mean by that is this: we cannot function as Elohim while we are engaged in conversations on Saturday, Sunday, Monday. We have to function as Elohim 24/7, all the time. And without regard to what we are confronted with, we can never lose sight of who we are. When Nick was talking about started talking about the Shema yesterday, I didn't hear all of it. But what I did hear during the period that I was able to be on was that we must come to the realization that we must come to the realization that the aspects of Yahweh, the Lord God, is one. We have to come to the realization that that's talking about us. We are deliverers, but we are also creators. And if we are deliverers / creators, then we must also embrace the reality that nothing and no one gets delivered unless we bring that deliverance. And that deliverance does not come unless we are delivered ourselves. And how do we deliver ourselves? And I harken back to what was said earlier. We deliver ourselves by learning the language of the universe. We deliver ourselves by not being shocked with what we hear on TV, not being moved or influenced by the politics that's around us, not being moved or influenced by the people who work with us in the different places where we work. That's how we become deliverers. We become creators by virtue of being deliverers. Because when deliverance takes place, something is created in its place. And the thing that's created in its place is a greater awareness, acceptance, and embracing of who we were created to be. And the simplicity of it is also the complexity of it. The simplicity of it is that we simply function as Elohim, no matter where we are, and we do not allow our emotions to be influenced by adversarial forces. That's the simplicity of it. But the complexity of it is being able to do that on the spur of the moment without even thinking about it. However, I submit to you that we don't get to the place where we can do that without thinking about it until we get to the until we continuously remind ourselves, that's not who I am. I'm not going to be moved by that. That's how we get to that place where we do it on the spur of the moment without having to think about it. Does that make sense? Or are there any questions?
Yeah, it makes sense.
Yeah.
I don't have a question.
Oh, go ahead.
I don't have a question, but wanted to remind us of what we saw in Exodus when we're talking about this universal language. When Moses came down and gave the people the utterances, the people saw the thunder and the torches and the voice of the ram horn and the hill of smoke, and in other words, things. I think Richard put it a different way. They gel together. Well, these people experienced the synthesis of all the senses when they saw the power of the Creator through the utterances. Everything together became one, and they were not separate. I saw this and I heard it was the reverberation and the resonance within them, that universal language that we all had originally, that captured them and motivated them to say, okay, I understanding their shortcomings, we can't really take this in. You speak for us, Moses. If the Lord speaks to us directly, we will be undone, something like that. But anyway, that was an example of everything just synthesizing and coming together and being felt and heard and seen all at once as one thing.
Even that, Barbara Jean, I see that also as being as being at a place where we learn to speak the language of the universe. Like in that when they said to Moses, you speak for us because we will be undone if we go to the mountain. Well, when Moses spoke for them, Moses was speaking the language of the universe. He was speaking the language of the Creator. He heard the Creator for what the Creator was saying. And he was able to communicate that to the people, but they refused to embrace it. And the ones who chose to embrace it, was Caleb and Joshua. So when we look at what Caleb and Joshua means, what we are seeing is that it doesn't matter who you are. You can be the deliverer, or you can be on the other end of that scale, for lack of a better term, or lack of a better example, rather. But you have the opportunity to hear the Creator's voice, to understand the language of the Creator. And when they were talking about going into the land of promise, that's what they were doing. They were hearing the language of the Creator. And what we have done, we hear the language of religion. We hear the language of the preacher. We have the language of the politician, but we don't hear the language of the Creator, because the language of the Creator is hidden inside of these shells that we call words, that we call Scripture. The real meaning of these words is the language of the universe / Creator. So in order for us to hear that, how can we hear that? How can we have any perception of it if we don't have a teacher? Is that not what the Scripture says? So what I'm beginning to see, Barbara Jean, is that every aspect, whether it be the Tower of Babel, or whether it be Moses in the wilderness, or whether it be Jesus in the garden, it's all about hearing the language of the universe. And the language of the universe always speaks calmness to us. It always, for example, Jesus didn't get caught up in what Pilate was saying. Jesus didn't get caught up in what the people were saying. Jesus stayed who he was throughout the whole ordeal. And what they're saying to us is, you don't allow outside influences to change how you respond in terms of being the creator, how you respond to each other, how you respond to mankind. Look at what Peter did. Peter denied him, but Jesus didn't deny Peter. So it's not about you getting even with somebody. It's not about somebody treating you the way that you want to be treated. It's about you treating yourself the way you ought to be treated. It's about you being kind to people without regard to how they treat you or what they say about you. And when that happens, we are actually experiencing the hearing of the language of our Creator. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Because anything is adversarial. Thank you. Anyone else comments or questions?
Yeah, the ability to hear, in the same way I was speaking about it yesterday when we talked about the Shema, requires you to create that sort of unmovable inner focus on your own connection to spirit, to the Creator. And so that is the channel through which any communication with the universe happens. So through meditation, etc., you can develop that calmness that Pastor Richards is talking about, where you are able to hear, quote unquote, the vibration of the universe, which is the language of the voice of the Creator, which is spirit, as it is able to translate itself sort of, quote unquote, down to us as we are in moving upwards towards it, so to speak, at the same time. So just to bring back what my dad was saying earlier, and this might seem out of a little bit of left field maybe, but to be on something like a hallucinogen or any of those sort of things we may have heard of that expand your perception or give you that, as we've been talking about, synthesis of your senses. There's good and bad with that, but that is in part what happens in a much more controlled, for lack of a better term maybe, but manageable way when you focus and meditate and you learn to calm yourself. You learn to use those senses and receive information from them. Whereas previously, we were entranced by this noise we were getting from the physical, material world and its surroundings, and its all the politics, all the religion, etc., that are bound to this physical consciousness. So to hear the language of the universe, to speak the language of the universe, is to put yourself in a calm, still place where you can hear the still, small voice that is speaking to you, that is the universe, the Creator, that is spirit speaking to you, and then learning how to develop that sense or that capacity more and more. And that is what will be explicitly necessary as we move through this period of transition, because the transition gets more and more chaotic all the time. And that is I believe in part what is referenced by the even the elect being deceived in the New Testament. That's just those who are seeking or on the path being pulled off the path by noise, essentially, by something that pricks them in a way that what makes them want to engage their ego or our ego, and our egotistical essentially response to whatever aspect of the noise of the apparent storm that we are attempting to remain in the center of. Anyway, thank you.
Shouldn't that increase your intensity or your desire would that not go back to the name Israel, the struggle? So
Um,
the more you desire this, what you expect that struggle. That's because I think that's where a lot of us are right now. That is a struggle. But it is your desire that pulls that ego out so that you can deal with it, is it not?
the desire is it's the basis of that. It's the thing that will anchor you if your desire is to remain connected or to, continue to seek that still small voice in the midst of all this stuff. But there is still sort of practical work to be done in that case. Your desire can be there. And that is the thing you come back to when you realize maybe you've gone off course at some point, which we all do, but there is still the recognition that you have gone off course and doing what it takes to recenter yourself when that occurs.
I agree with what both of you said. It makes all the sense in the world when we're talking about the possibilities of the very elect being deceived. It is a struggle, but the question becomes this. If it's a struggle, and indeed it is, then are we going to just say it's a struggle and continue the struggle, or are we going to do something about it? And see, for so long, what we have been doing is running from a struggle. When we were struggling with doing our struggles, rather, because we're still doing it, struggling with racism, we have gone to the government running from racism, trying to embrace the very principles that created racism, as opposed to embracing our deep desire to bring it to a resolution and allowing the Creator to show us the pathway to get that done. Right now, there are those who say it's so hard. Yes, everything is hard until you do it. One of the most difficult things that you will ever do is drive a car, because of all of the muscles and all of the processes that takes place within the confines of your mind for you to keep that car on the road without hitting someone, keeping it between the lines, or being able to keep up with where you are, where you're going. All of these things are involved in driving a car. And it seems simple to you now because you can do it. But it was not simple in the beginning. So if you're going to make anything simple, you cannot just say it's a struggle. You have to, your desire cannot just look at it as a struggle, because desire without action, and I'm not talking about physical action, desire without action is not worth, it ain't worth the hill of beans. It's dead. You can sit and desire change all you want, but until you begin to address that desire for change, you will never get the change. You have to do something about it. What is the doing about the change that you desire? What is the doing? Again, the doing is all about what you do internally, how you face the dilemmas that you come in contact with, how you deal with the people who are adversarial towards you, how do you deal with your adversarial attitude towards other people. That's responding to your desires. That's reinforcing your desires. That's bringing your desires to a place of reality. No matter how hard the task is, it can be someone within your circle who all of a sudden you find out they really are not your friend, or it could be someone within your family structure who has been using you, or it can be someone in your circle who's dying. All of these things calls on us to make some decisions. whether we're going to struggle with the principles or whether we're going to hold on to who we are and whose we are. Are we going to deal with these situations the way that we know we should? Example. Yes, it's heartbreaking for someone who you thought was your friend for you to find out they have been using you. But when you understand that they are not using you, they are destroying themselves. They are not hurting you, they're hurting themselves because you are true to who you are. You can't allow that to change who you are. If someone in your circle, your family structure is dying, you have to embrace that reality. It hurts emotionally, absolutely. But you cannot throw all caution to the wind, meaning that not caution, God, that's a bad word. You cannot throw everything out that you know the truth to be. You have to hold on to what you know the truth to be. That transitioning from this body is not really dying, as we have been taught it is. Transitioning from this body is finding out what life truly is. Now, you say, but it hurts. Yes, it hurts. My God, it hurts. But guess what? Think about it this way. It's not the transition from the body that hurts you. You got an uncle or aunt or someone that you see every 5 years, maybe not as much. But when you see them, you pick up where you left off. You have a friend the same way. You don't even see them. But the moment that they die, it hurts you. So why does it hurt? It hurts because the body is no longer available in the earth for you to see. And you know that you won't see it anymore. If you think about it, you have not seen them. So if it is the absence of their presence, then you should go through the same emotions, should you not? When they're not there. But you don't go through those emotions until you find out that they will never be there again in physical form. Does that make sense? So when we embrace the reality of that, then our attitudes towards a whole lot of other things began to change. It doesn't mean that you don't hurt from that. The reason you have this emotional pain is so that you will have some sense of empathy and sympathy for humanity itself. But if you don't have some kind of emotional pain when you hear of an 11-year-old being shot in his own house because he called the police called the police rather to settle an argument or to protect his mom, if that doesn't bother you, something wrong with you. Now, if you can only experience those feelings when it is somebody in your circle, you're selfish. It's all about you and yours. And because of that, you find it more difficult to be Elohim. You find it more difficult to be the spiritual being that you were created to be. You find it more difficult to hold on to what you say you believe. And as a result of that, you're always struggling, trying to be who you were created to be. At some point, you have to make a decision that you are going to stop struggling. You're going to learn, you're going to teach yourself how to respond as opposed to reacting by virtue of understanding the language of our Creator, the language of our universe. And that language is be who you were created to be at all times. I'm gonna go get even with you does not exist for you. I'm not gonna let anybody walk over me does not exist for you. All of these things are getting back at somebody does not exist for you. And as long as they do, you will always struggle to be who you were created to be. Any questions or comments? I'm done. Ron, if you're talking, we can't hear you.
No, I'm not saying anything. Any questions, y'all? Nick, I had another question for you. You said on yesterday, and I may have gotten off early, didn't catch the rest of this. You said all Hebrew names are a formula for consciousness, and I wanted you to go into that, but I like I said, I may have gotten off before you got back to that.
Oh, that's
Do
okay.
you remember that?
Yeah,
Yeah.
they are all Hebrew names. The Hebrew language is are formulas of consciousness. So every letter is a aspect of the cosmic personality of the creator, as it is expressed in us through our own conscious awareness. So when we see, for example, Yeshua, which we've talked about many times, that is the same thing contained in the Shema, which is the Tetragrammaton, the YHWH, Yahweh. Yeshua is the Yahweh with the addition of the letter Shin, Hebrew letter Shin. It is the addition of the fire that enlivens the process that is outlined by the formula of consciousness, Yahweh. So when you combine those two together, you get the process of delivering the self from illusion, from ignorance, from all the things that prevent us from being who and what we are, as we've just been speaking about. All those things that prevent us from being able to hear the universe, to hear the creator. And that's why the Shema is so important, because it's the foundational instruction in a way. Perhaps it's not the best term, but it is the foundation. You have to hear in order to know what to do with yourself. And so that concept that the Hebrew language and the Hebrew words are all formulas of consciousness plays out through everywhere in the entire Bible. When you see names, when you see whatever, it doesn't matter. Because these are all concepts of the self. Yes.
I'm sorry, go ahead. I thought you were finished.
No, I'm finished. Go ahead.
Okay. So when we really look at Yeshua, Jesus, when we really look at that name, we are not looking at somebody as a body hanging on a cross or getting up from a grave. What we're actually saying with that name is this. It's speaking to the deliverance of self. That's why Jesus said, not only what I do, you shall do also. Deliverance of self, meaning that the shin is fire. So it is the burning fire that purifies, meaning that it burns off the dross. And what is the dross? What is it that brings about deliverance with this fire of purification? What is it? It is the thing that burns off the belief that we have been given, the belief that you got to be baptized with water in order for you to go to heaven, that the Bible doesn't even talk about. Burning all of that away from you, because the scripture clearly says that John said, I baptize with water, but there shall come one after me who will baptize with the Holy Spirit. And we have totally disowned that until we get to what we call charismatic ministry, and you got to be speaking in tongues before that happens. All that's crazy. That's the kind of stuff that's burned away. The truth of the matter is that Jesus is simply saying that within yourself, you have the power to deliver yourself through the fire, through the spiritual fire that burns within. And the spiritual fire that burns within is the fire that clears your awareness, clears your your belief system, clears your mind, so that you have an awareness of who you really are and how you are really supposed to function in this earth. All of these things about choir singing and ushering and missionaries raising money for no cause, all of these things have absolutely nothing to do with the scriptures. Therefore, they have to be burned away from our mind, not necessarily our memories, from our mind, so that we don't act on them or feel guilty if we are not. Does that make sense? Questions, comments? I mean, because there is no justification in the scriptures for any of that. Is that what we're saying there?
Oh, yes. And the thing that, when we talk about the fire that purifies the self or that delivers the self, that is in the religious sense, that is the confused version of that is the sense that is a judgment, which is where the also very distorted idea of hell comes from. The fire within you is the fire of love, essentially. It is the passion to reconnect with all those things you have forgotten. And it is the spiritual core that fuels all of that work. It is the remembrance that you are one with all things, and that all things seek to be reconnected, have a burning desire to be reconnected. And when we talk about burning desire, that's another, like Dad, you were saying, phrase that comes into our language as a result of our inner understanding of these spiritual principles. The burning desire we have at the center of our being is to remember and to be one with all those things that we have separated ourselves from.
Absolutely. I just, something just came to my mind when you were speaking, and that is, if Jesus said that if you believe as I believe, not only will you do what I've done, but greater things than these you shall do, right? That means that we can do anything that Jesus did, does it not? Now, if it means that we can do anything that Jesus did, and if we have to do what Jesus did and obey it in order for us to go to this place called heaven, then when's the last time you have known someone to walk on water? Because that's one of the things he did. The only time you can walk on water is when it's on the floor. That's it. So that has to mean something different than that. There has to mean something else. It cannot mean that the obedience to Jesus is walking on water. It cannot mean it's just that. The obedience to Jesus is simply understanding his nature, what he came to do, the essence of his being, understanding what the scriptures are actually saying to us, as opposed to accepting what somebody told you they said. So we have to rethink this whole thing when it comes to understanding what it means to deliver ourselves and to be responding to this internal fire that burns away all of the dross, all of the things that we have been told that's not true. We have to dispense with religion. And again, let me reiterate, if those who are in search or on this journey of truth are continuously influenced by the environment they live in terms of being upset because of what people say, being upset because of what they hear on the news, being upset because of some kid being killed, being upset by all these things, we will never get to the place where we are not struggling. Never. And when we get to the place where we are not struggling, that's when we change humanity. Because right now, we see enough of the presence of our of spirituality in the earth. We see enough of it for everything to be exposed. But we're not at that place yet where we see the change of everything. Again, because it doesn't change until you change. Our desires for exposure did not come until our attitude towards those things changed. As long as we were angry with people who were misogynist or people who were racist, as long as we were angry with them, nothing changed. But when we started to desire the exposure of racism and our anger was no longer there, what was there is pity for those who are racist. And understanding that we can't end racism, the racists have to do that. When we embrace those realities, it is then that we started seeing the exposure of all of it. Now that we have seen the exposure of all of it, we cannot allow that which has been exposed to control our lives, to control our emotions. And I reiterate that because it is imperative that we understand that. As long as we allow the things that we expose to have an adverse influence on us, can't sleep at night because of something that happened, then nothing will change because we're giving life to it. It's living based on our fears, because that's exactly what it is. We are giving life to it because of our energy, as opposed to simply seeing what's happening and reminding ourselves that this exposure is necessary for deliverance. So when we deliver ourselves from the responses or reactions we have to all of these things that's going on, that's when we deliver humanity. Does that make sense? Any questions or comments about that? And I think that's what all of us, that's the thing that all of us have been saying all morning. Am I right? Yes, I'm not.
Yes.
Okay.
I want to see if I can sum it up though. What you're saying, the struggle is. Nick said something yesterday. It's where this comes from, and I want to tie it to what you're saying, at least if I can. Nick says when he talks about "Hear, O Israel," Israel is talking about the struggle and the stride to move to the direction of the Creator. So that struggle, when you it is talking about the one who seeks to know who they are. So that comes about because your consciousness is being challenged. Those things that you thought you were aware of, those things that were important to you, those things that you value. Can someone mute your phone, please? And when we move to the place where we recognize who we are, when we embrace the fact that some of the things we talked about, I am one with Elohim. When you see that, when you know that place, that's kind of hard for me to say it. That's when the struggle. You see the struggle as not being a struggle. You see it as being something that does not overpower you. It's not something in an
opportunity.
Right. It's not something. It's not just a direction that you're striding to become or gain. You move to a place where it becomes an opportunity, and it becomes more of not something that brings you down or moves you to an emotional place. And you start to deal with things from a different place, from a different level, from a different consciousness, meaning that you've moved to a place internally where you've moved self out of the way and your value systems have changed. And you recognize now that I am one with Elohim, I am one with the universe, and I do feel that rhythm. So those things now, those opportunities become something that you deal with for mankind rather than being obstacles in your way. Is that what you're saying? So you move from being just Israel, you move to being Elohim. Am I simplifying it too much?
I think that's good. It's those things that would throw you off the path instead become fuel for that internal fire to balance and heal the self. And in so doing, balance and heal all those things the self has encountered. Is, I believe, part of what part of a way to describe that would be.
Yeah, I like that.
Yeah.
And by the way, we're not saying don't have empathy, of course. But there is a difference between being empathetic and being caught up in the very negativity that we seek to heal.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We have a question. Go ahead, Jack. Hold on 1 second. The battery may be dead now.
Yes, I was just trying to follow along with you when you said being selfless. If we're caught up in our world, if nothing bothers us, then we're selfish. But then if we do watch the news, I guess, if we do watch the news and it doesn't bother us, are we still, you follow what I'm saying? I'm trying to catch up with you.
Okay.
Because initially you said,
I understand what you're saying.
okay.
What I'm actually saying is this. If you watch the news and it has an adverse effect on you, you get upset and angry about what you're hearing. That's the problem. But if you have empathy because of what happened and it does not bring anger out of you, that's totally different. I can have empathy for them shooting that 11-year-old boy, but I'm not angry with them about it because I understand the source of it. The source of it is insanity. As Nick was talking about yesterday, the source of it is insanity. You have to be insane to, in less than 2 seconds, shoot an 11-year-old child who's doing exactly what you told him to do. So it's a difference. There was a time when I would have been angry, and there was a period when I would have been angry to the extent that I actually moved to organize to do something about it. However, because I am aware of who I am, my empathy is there absolutely. But my empathy is not only for the child and the family, but it's also for the one who pulled the trigger. Because he's insane. You cannot be in your right mind and do that and think it's okay. Now what we hear in the church is that the empathy is supposed to go towards the one who got shot. It's simply because he's a policeman, it's okay. We're supposed to be either angry with that policeman, but we cannot be empathetic. Now, how is it that you're not to be empathetic with people who are not in their right mind? If our Creator was not empathetic with us, we wouldn't exist. Because there are things that we do and have done that if our Creator was not empathetic, look at what happened with Moses. The Creator said, I'm going to destroy them all. Moses says, no. They would say that you could not keep them in the wilderness. So the Creator says, go down and deal with your people. All of us would be destroyed if the Creator had not given charge over us to someone who is willing to stand in the gap and speak what the Creator is saying, regardless of who hears it or who chooses not to hear it. Does that make sense, Jackie? You got that? Okay. Any other questions about that? Or comments?
Yeah, I have a
Anyone?
comment. This is Mary. I
ahead.
thought about as you were talking, but that's what Jesus did when he was on the cross. Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do. And that's a process that we have. But I mean, we can do it, and I understand that, because to hurt somebody without having, you got to feel bad for somebody that's in their wrong, that's not in their right mind, and kill a child, kill a woman, or kill anybody. So I agree with that. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Anyone else? And at some point we'll talk about that. Jesus being on that cross, because that is a message within itself. A deeper message than I think most of us have even thought about. But then that's a whole new lesson as well, when we talk about what the cross actually means, as opposed to what we have been told it means. It's much, much, much more involved than what we have been told. It's more than a man being on the cross and dying. Okay? Any other questions or comments?
Just an observation, when you talked about Jesus walking on the water and the symbolization there, and the symbolism there, it resonated with me, because it means so much more. If you get to the root of what water is and what it means spiritually, it is that very act of uniting the masculine and feminine energies, giving us the balance that we need, that shows us that water, which also is a symbol of spiritualism, spirituality, that we, based on this unification and understanding who we are, and with the foundation of the essence, the spiritual essence of who we are, we can rise above any physical circumstance. And we can do those things that seem to be miraculous from a physical perspective, but really are not spiritually. We can literally walk on water, because that is the basis of who we are. And so I just thought that as another way of saying what you have been saying, what Nick has been saying, what Ryan has been saying, that all of this, the synthesis of all of this, putting it all together, understanding all of this from the perspective of Elohim, that's what walking on the water means. It's not literally walking on the water. It's more than that, and it's deeper than that, and it's better than that. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Well, if there are no questions or comments, then maybe we'll take a pause until tomorrow at 6 o'clock. And today at 3, we are to be on with the California Church, for those who would be on today. That information is in the facilitators in the text feed. So if there are no questions or comments, are there any before we go? No further questions or comments. We thank you for your time. Ron?
Thank you. Enjoyed it. And I'm looking forward to hearing the rest of those verses as well. If you, I know you guys didn't finish them yesterday, right, Nick?
Of the Shema, you mean?
Yeah. Did you?
Oh, no, I just did the first one. Though I will
Okay.
say that is the most important one.
Okay. Okay.
And we can actually do the next one on Saturday.
Okay.
Very good.
Thank you.
Okay.
Enjoy it, everyone. Have a great day.
Thank you,
Talk with
everyone.
you later.
Thank you, everyone.
Um,
Bye, thank you.